Good evening, everybody from SASA. My name is Yvonne Ankerman, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about sketching and plein air sketching that you can do anywhere and anytime, whether you're at home or on holiday, in your garden, on the beach. So that is the subject of today's meeting. But first, let me introduce myself to you. So I, as well as sketching and painting at home in South Africa, I'm an expedition guide and artist on residence on an expedition ship. Some of you may have seen a few of my presentations that I had at SASA a couple of years ago. And I work either in Antarctica, in the Arctic, Norway, South America, and Africa. But the main thing is that I always have a sketchbook with me. I teach on the ship. So this is one of the sketchbooks I have in hand here that I'm demonstrating my students on the ship. And we have a lot of fun. I get people from all walks of life that are there to enjoy and that want to learn a little bit more about maybe journaling or creating their own sketchbook for themselves. So as I say, you can sketch anywhere, absolutely anywhere. This is me in my kitchen. I had got this beautiful orchid from a friend of mine for my birthday. And it was during lockdown where I did a lot of these paintings that you'll be seeing. And so I had all these orchids on the table and decided that this is the ideal spot. It was in winter and had some really nice sort of summer light coming through the kitchen window, and did a little bit of sketching. This is watercolor sketch. So when I talk about sketching, it can be anything from pencil, pen and ink, watercolor sketching, small little studies, anything you can basically do from life. And all these objects are around the house, everywhere you look. There's always something to paint or to sketch. So never think, oh, well, I don't have any subject matter and what must I sketch today? You will find so much that is just in and around the house or in the garden. So I'm quite fortunate that we have quite a great indigenous fynbos garden. And then I walk around, I have a look if there's anything different flowering, because different times of the year, there's different things flowering. And it's just good to put it down as a record for later. So these you can either do in a little book that you can page through later. I had done some of them in a book, some of them separate, but of course in a sketchbook it's great because you can always go back even later on in life. You know, my ambition is that one day when I'm a little bit older, maybe in my 80s or something like that, I can look back into these sketchbooks and I can page through them and it'll bring me back to the places that I've been and where I sat and where I sketched. Because remember, if you are doing something from life and you are studying that particular flower, be it or landscape, whatever you're painting, you're putting so much more attention into creating that detail, maybe the light coming from a certain part. You'll remember exactly where you sat, what the weather was like. It's just so much more rewarding than painting from a photograph, because that photograph you might have got from a magazine or maybe one of the thousands of photographs you've taken. Maybe sometimes you don't even remember where it is. But believe me, if you go back and look in your sketchbooks, you'll remember where everything is, exactly where you sat and where you painted it. For instance, here I went with my husband to the Harold Porter Botanical Gardens, and that's very close to us. That's just on the way to Hermanus along the False Bay coastline. And this was after some quite heavy rain, so this little geyser waterfall was flowing. But it's a very, as you can see with my thumb on there, it's a very small little sketch. I will show you later on in the presentation. This is in a little concertina sketch book that I made myself. So I just took large sheets of paper, good quality watercolor paper, so it's fairly thickish, and cut it into strips, taped them together at the back and made this like really long concertina book, which I will show you later on. But yeah, little examples of just little studies, little watercolor sketches. And these are not necessarily things that you're going to try and sell at one of the exhibitions, but something more for yourself, something that you would like to practice. And you'll find the more that you do, the better you get. And don't worry about someone looking over your shoulder or whatever. Just remember, you're always going to be a better artist than the person looking over your shoulder. So that's nothing to worry about. So over here, I'm just showing you my sketch pack, what I have in it. This is a small little pouch, which has great clips that can, I can either put it over my shoulder or I can strap it around my waist. And this is all I need when I go traveling anywhere, whether it's to the beach down the road, whether it's to Europe. This is all I take with me. Tiny little palette. I bought it empty at the decal edge, and I just squeeze in the colors that I actually want to use. There are quite a few blues there, just because I do quite a few seascapes and that, so you can choose any colors you want. I have many sketchbooks that are this particular size, especially to fit in my little pack. So it doesn't, you don't have to have particularly white paper. I also, you can see these are the same size. I use this brown paper quite a lot. You can also buy this at the decal edge. What is quite nice is the white stands out quite well, and that is gouache then that I use. So I always take a little tube of white gouache with me. It's not 100% purest watercolor, but I mean, who cares? So it's just great to use for brown paper or any other colored paper. These are my brushes and my pencil, always a little bit of paper towel. That is a little spray bottle for water. My gouache tube, the pliable eraser and sharpener that everyone's got, and the folding water canister. What else do I have here? Oh, yes, all my pens. So these go around everywhere with me. I buy whenever I see something quite nice and different. The white one is a calligraphy pen, which does wonderful shapes. I've got a great Posca pen and in black and white, and then the waterproof or watercolor pens. I've got an old spray bottle, just something from the kitchen that I take with just to fill up my water or to spray my paper before I actually start. And then I use it to spray my palette before I start painting, just to get the paints a little bit soft again. So that was a little bottle of ink that I sometimes use with a dip pen. So here I'm spraying my palette just to get it ready. And then I want to show you some of the pencils that I've got in my box. So these are the sort of basics that I use, anything from a 4B, 5B. The one is not a waterproof, a water-soluble pencil. This one that I'm holding, great for just a little bit of sketches to get a bit of a gray color if you add a little bit of water to it. And it makes sort of a nice wash, yet the pencil marks always still show through it. But it's a good one to sketch with. And you can go over with the water again to make it a little bit darker. Then the various brushes. This is a sable. It's a number 8 sable that I've had for many, many years. So those are ones that you really want to look after. This is a pencil that I bought in Paris many years ago when I was at the Cité des Arts. And it has this lovely, it's a sort of a graphite lead pencil, 4B. And has many refills that you can put in. So these are the normal pencil color lead, and then I tell you, these go far away. I mean, I've used this little box for ages, and then those ones are more burnt sienna type of color for other sketches. What's nice about that is you can just put the little lead back in the pencil, and it keeps the tip covered. My trusty old toothbrush. This was an old one from one of those packs you get in the plane, but any old toothbrush would do. And it's great for doing a little bit of splattering for texture here and there along the way. I love my little bits of splattering, just adds a little bit of character to any sort of painting and a little bit of texture. My mop brush is a Da Vinci mop brush. It's sort of like a medium size. It absorbs a lot of paint, but it's my favorite brush. So I actually use this pretty much all the time. Then I've just got a couple of synthetic smaller brushes that might give a little bit more detailed line. That's wet on wet and wet on dry. It's just some examples there. Oh, and my big flat brush. So this is also a favorite for especially doing large areas of wet on wet, maybe for skies or for seascapes. You want to cover that big area quite quickly, and so it doesn't do a lot of bleeds along the way. So that really works well. So I have got that one. That one is a particular one is a Waterfall number 18. So you've got to look after these brushes. Some of these just last for years and years and years, and it's really is something that you look after. My water brush, I must say, I don't use this one too often. So you fill up that little tube at the back with water, and if you press it, you can go into any color and it will paint quite detail work with that color. Then you don't have to rinse it in your water container necessarily. You can just press it and then dab it on the paper and then go into your next color. So that is what is particularly nice if you don't want to carry too much water with you. So that's very handy to have. And then the gouache, of course, really handy. Any brand will do. That's my putty eraser. One nice thing about this particular eraser is it doesn't leave the little residue of the other normal erasers. They work really well. They don't scrunch up the paper. They don't lift the paper from the paper, and that is what it looks like. I think this one is can't remember the brand of that one, but you can even get it at the right shop. You can get them anywhere, so they're really, really handy. That was my little ink bottle. This is a waterproof ink. You don't always have to use the waterproof ink. I've got various types, but this is what I use mainly with a dip pen. And a dip pen is like the old, I guess, type of calligraphy pen with different nibs. They're not too expensive, also available everywhere. And this is used quite a lot when you do urban sketching. So you just dip it in and then make a mark with it that is either flat or thicker or thinner. And what's quite nice is you don't always have to use ink. If you have leftover watercolors, you can just dip into that. My palette there is a little bit shallow, but it will take any of the colors that you have there. So if you wanted turquoise or bright yellow, you just dip it in a nice mixture of that color, and then you can do your lines like that. So I've used it quite a bit with the orchid that I showed you earlier on. Here I've got a couple of inks that I bought, but these are not, these are water soluble. So they run when I put water on them, but sometimes that makes a really nice effect. But it's great to use maybe afterwards, just to put a couple of details in with any color. So it's quite a, if you dip it in well, you can actually do a pretty long line with the ink. So these are all just little great things to use as you go along. Another pretty good thing that I bought when I was in Scotland, but I think you can get them here. These are I don't have very many of them. They were quite pricey. These are called neo colors. And it's almost like, looks like just a wax crayon. So I just bought a few colors. And what you do is you just put it on your page, wherever you want it. So you can see it works like a wax crayon. But then you take your brush and you put water on it. And it just makes a wonderful soft color with just a little bit of the sort of wax feel shining through it. Also great again for texture and just adding here and there for something different. So I think my aim is to get quite a few more of that type of thing. Then you've got to really keep them safe because you don't want them to snap in half or bend, or you don't want to lose anything like that. Right, let's get to the next. Okay, so as I said, you can paint or sketch anywhere you want. Here I have used some of the pens that I was talking about. This was just sitting at the bottom of our garden and sketching the garden. I've here got a micron, anything from a 1 to an 8. I normally use a 5 or an 8 quite often. My calligraphy pen, there you can, where is it? There's a screen. You can see this calligraphy pen. This is the micron 8. And then my Posca pens that I use really often. These are great. They're acrylic paint in there, so it's also all waterproof. And then a type of uni pen. I have a variety that I use. So this is just a sketch from the bottom of the garden. Yeah, so the sketching that you do does not have to be painting. It can be a pen and ink as well. This is also the bottom of the garden. During lockdown, I had quite a bit of fun around the fish pond. We had these cute little frogs. You can see the one in the top left hanging onto the grid there. Various fish. Don't know if my fish were that successful, but you know, it's a lot of fun. They were moving all the time, and the water lilies. So you can anything to paint. Here also another example of something that you do once in your sketchbook, and say you want to do it later on in your studio. That's what these sketchbooks are great for as well. So the one on the top and the brown paper I had done on site. This was from Komiki Beach, and this bottom one I did later on in the studio with a little bit of pen and ink and watercolor. But I'm just going to show you here the process. So I first put my water on, drop my watercolor on. Nothing has to be detailed or too, don't get stressed that it's running all over the place. I've added a little bit of ink. This is my hair dryer on the right hand side. That is just drying it a little bit while I paint. So you can see it's drying quite nice and fast. Now they're putting in a little bit of white, which is just some highlights of maybe the surf where it's rippling at close to the beach and breaking up against the rocks. And this little watercolor, I mean, it doesn't take long at all. Maybe it took me 15 minutes or so just to get it going. But that's what's quite nice about your sketchbook, because you can go and look through your sketches and see if there's anything you want to do later on in your studio. And you'll remember that subject really, really well, because you've sat there and you've concentrated on it and drawn it in well, as much detail as you want, basically, in your own style. But then you can come home and your painting then will go so much easier because you really have it imprinted in your mind. Here I went early in the morning. This is on the other side of False Bay, looking towards Cape Honklip from Royals. And my husband and I went early in the morning. He's a very keen bird watcher. And I said, okay, fine, I'll come with. Took my coffee with. And I sat down and painted as the sun came over the hills from the eastern side. And it was just wonderful, peaceful, quiet, not another soul. Beautiful colors. You can really have a bit of fun. You can see this is not a very big sketch either, but the white detail in the watercolor is with the Posca pen right at the end, and the thicker line is with the calligraphy pen, and then the thinner ones with the edge. But from your garden, maybe a lot of you've got this type of lavender. It's a very sort of grateful plant that to have in the garden. It just goes on and on and on. It's absolutely gorgeous. So during our winter, we had fantastic lavender. And here I did a little sketch as well of the lavender. And once the watercolor was finished, I added the pen. So you can do it the one way or the other way. First your watercolor and then your pen work, like I'm doing over here with the lavender, or you can do your pen work first and drop in your color afterwards. But sometimes if you drop in your color afterwards, you might tend to stick into the lines too much, and it becomes like a bit of try and paint in the lines painting. And I like the feeling that it's a little bit more loose. Some of it might have paint in it, some of it not, and it just gives a feeling of a lot looser effect. If it's a blustery day with rain outside, you don't want to go outside, look at what you've got around the house. So here my mother I was spending some time with my mother, and she had a great little vase with some nice flowers in, and here I did it in two different varieties. So one in a big sketchbook. This is a moleskin sketchbook that is what is that size? A5. It's a really big one. And then I did another one separately on paper, just to get into the subject, to see how I could make it different, maybe improve here or there. I think at the end of the day, I did the one in my sketchbook first, and I think that's the one I prefer compared to the one on the left. But yep. So just good exercises all around. Another good example, something that you walk on the beach, maybe not so much right here. I live here in Glencairn Heights, so there's not that many shells on the beach. But anywhere else that you walk around, maybe the Noordhoek side, or up in Pringle Bay, up near that area, Betty's Bay, you get a lot more shells and a little bit of rocks and that sort of thing on the beach. So here I did a small watercolor. Also I put the paint down first, and then I did sketches, and then maybe added a few little highlights in that. And just to show you that not every single shell has to be painted exactly. You know, you have some kind of focal point when you're doing a smaller painting, and the one that you want to shine basically in your painting. So you don't have to say everything with every painting. Here's just a collection of what I called my lockdown paintings. I ended up painting many days in a row, a lot of them quite small. For instance, the top right-hand one of just the leaves, that's like a postcard size. But these are great little things that you could do and then use them as a thank you card, as a little gift card. Maybe if paintings haven't worked out, you could cut them up smaller, make little gift tags, punch a hole in the side, use them at Christmas time, or sell the little paintings. You know, once you put a mount around it and have it in a portfolio or have it at a market, one of the art in the parks, it's really a great little thing. Sometimes for very little effort, you can get a great result, and you might have masses of original little cards to sell, or put them in packs of 10, or if hopefully you'll have one of the art and parks again soon, and then you can sell these little items. One of the ideas I had was I put them on Facebook, and I actually sold quite a lot of them. I've probably got a third left, but 2/3 are sold, which I'm really grateful for, because now, of course, with the corona disaster, I'm not doing any ship work, which I've been doing for the last 6 years. So I had to resort back to what I do and love doing the most, which is painting, but then also trying to get a little bit of an income from it. But it's been great. It's really got me back into my painting. This one here I did in my big moleskin book. it was flowers. This was one of the projects on a rainy day. As you can see, I've got my jacket on. It was a pretty cold day. I had taken some photographs at that great little flower shop in Constantia, where you would turn left to go to Groot Constantia. You have that whole coffee shop area there. There's a lady selling flowers, and if you go with the sun shining on them, you can get the most beautiful photographs of fresh flowers. So I had taken photographs of tulips and irises and all kinds of things. And here's just a quick time lapse of how this painting started. I put down a little bit of water, just more or less an idea where the flowers were going to be, helping it with the hairdryer to dry in certain points so I can add a little bit more. No drawing with a pencil first, just drawing straight with a brush. These are also great exercises you can do. And you know what? It might not come out the first time or the second time or the third time, but the more you do, the better it gets. And it's not every painting is going to be a star. You know, some of them are going to be disasters. So you've just got to have fun and just create. You can see here on the left-hand side, I then later on added some splatters. You'll see on the top of the irises, some splatters with the brush or a toothbrush, and then added a little bit of pen and ink once it had dried. That palette that I'm using in this one is slightly larger than the one I showed you in the beginning, but also a plastic one. Great. I tend to, sometimes I will take that on my travels as well, just depending on how much space that I have. I'm fortunate to have quite a lot of fynbos in my garden, a lot of pincushions and proteas, and of course, being from the Cape, this is what you want to paint. This is quite a quick thing as well. I did do the basic shape in a pencil line, then came with pen and ink. So I did that first and then just dropped a bit of color here and there. So it's not exact, it's not every little stem, every leaf is the same. It's just an impression, and it was lying on a piece of paper, so I tended to put a bit of shadow in of it lying on the paper. This is another painting this was a Fabriano watercolor book, which is quite nice because it's got like a serrated edge along the side where you can tear these out easily if you want to give it to somebody or if you want to sell it. This flower is on my windowsill in the kitchen, and also another coldish day in winter, but with just a little bit of sun coming through. It had the most wonderful light, so I did this just straight with a brush. And you can see all the what you would call backruns or cauliflowers, but you know, that is actually what I like about it. It's not perfect. I like sort of the freshness of the way it turned out. It's not detailed, but you can still see what it is. And sometimes with watercolor, this is the essence of watercolor. So the main reason that I really, during my travels, I take my sketchbook with is just to record all those little details, trying to imprint on my memory places that I've been. As I say, when you've sketched it, you will remember it 100 times more than if you've just taken 1,000 photographs. So wherever you go, I really recommend you pack a little sketch pack with you. It really doesn't weigh a lot. You can put it in the plane as long as there's no water in your bottles when you take that. But other than that, you can put it all in your hand luggage. It's very easy, light to carry. And what is nice is that you sometimes do some writing on your journals. So you can almost have it as a type of diary. You can do your watercolor sketch and then a bit of writing on the side, or a lot of writing with a tiny little sketch or drawing or pen and ink drawing on the side. So it doesn't, as I say, all have to be watercolor full on pages. I tend to do more watercolor on my pages with sometimes a little bit of writing just to say where it is and sort of a bit of an idea, something I want to remember. but not all my books have that. Then sometimes I would write a lot on the one side, and then the other side would have a watercolor painting. This is in Antarctica on one of our trips. You can see it was a really cold, blustery day. The snow was blowing off the glacier here. And so we get dressed in all our kit to go ashore. And I don't always have the opportunity to paint ashore, but I always carry that kit with me. So if the opportunity arises, I quickly sit down somewhere, do a bit of a sketch, and just have a memory of where this is. This is Brown Bluff in the Weddell Sea on the peninsula. Very, very awesome place. And here I want to show you a little bit the sketchbook. You can see it's quite small. Here I've done a little bit of writing here and there, just where it is. Here's another one of Brown Bluff on the other side. It's just a great memory of the places that you've been to. This one actually doesn't have that much writing, but if I look at it now, I remember every single little place on one of these sketches, be it 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, this wasn't our last season, but so 2019, but it is just an incredible way for memories to stick in your mind and to look at later on with great fondness. But of course, it doesn't have to be Antarctica. It can be anywhere that you travel. So we travel to the bush quite a lot. My husband's a safari guide, and I get to go with him pretty often. And here we were in the Caprivi at Horseshoe Bend, and we had these elephants. This was like a viewing point. And these elephants came by, and I tell you, I've never seen anything like it. At the end, there must have been, I don't know, there were hundreds and hundreds of elephants. And they came from both sides, the other side of the river and the left-hand side, and then they started swimming across the river, and it just carried on and on and on. It was absolutely awesome. I must say my animal paintings are not the best, but oh my goodness. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. We had great little camps in tents, and so a bit of an opportunity. It was as hot as anything. Bit of an opportunity for another bush type of sketch. Great for practicing your perspective as well. This was in Greenland, as you can see, pretty chilly, and I gave a class outside. Most of the students were a little bit further down on the rock. And that's sort of the kit that I wear most of the time. Great big polar boots, gloves. They're woolen gloves, but with the tips off. And we were doing a little bit of sketching here, but it was pretty chilly. And this also in Greenland, a little place called Itikotemet. And I had the morning off. We went ashore, and they said, "Hey, Yvonne, you can go and paint today." So this was like a really great little day. Here's my sketch. And then I came later on and I put watercolor in it, but yeah. But it doesn't have to be overseas. It can be local as well. The Klein Karoo, this is where I hosted an art retreat last month. This was just outside Oudtshoorn on the way to Kango Caves. And so we had a great week there. Did a lot of painting, 2 watercolors in on my big moleskin book. But it also doesn't have to be watercolor. You can do oils, acrylics. It really doesn't matter which medium you work in. In fact, you can do oils on paper. It dries incredibly quickly. But little studies like that are great. You don't always need a canvas to carry around. If it's too heavy and too bulky, and you know, take a nice thick paper in a sketchbook and do oil or acrylic on your book. So here is another retreat in the Karoo up near Middelburg, and that was more an oil painting. And oh yeah, here, this is, I wanted to show you, I did quite a lot on the retreat, just like little things. I did some of these sketches when we went to see the flowers, the wild flowers this season. That was absolutely gorgeous up the coast. Some of the pictures in here you will have seen already. And this is another one of my, or the little concertina sketchbook that I talked about earlier. I cut big sheets of paper into longer strips, tape it together at the back, and then make a concertina sketchbook. So anything that you want to put on there, any type of little doodles. I tried sometimes to make the one lead into the other. And just wherever you are, you can just got this small little page that you can then do something on. Some of the little vijgies, that was up the west coast. And also that Postberg, the view onto Langebaan side. But these are great when you don't want to maybe do, if you feel your sketchbook is a little bit too precious, make a couple of these. You can just go mad, have fun, do a bit of practice on those maybe before you commit to your sketchbook. But it's also small enough to pop into my little art bag and to carry around with me. No problem at all. Then before the coronavirus struck, my husband and I had a week in Zanzibar. This is, if you go plan a holiday anytime, this is a place not to be missed. It is an absolutely awesome, awesome island, not far from us. We took the flight with Mango. It was very reasonable. The accommodation is reasonably priced. The food is amazing. The fruit, the warmth, the color of the ocean, it is spectacular. So if you love swimming and snorkeling, and yeah, always absolutely wonderful. We went in February, wasn't exactly the right time of year to go. It was rather hot. So I would maybe go more in the winter months or spring, something like that, but don't go in the middle of summer like we did. I had opportunity to sketch whenever. My husband just wanted to do a lot of birding. So I went with him on those days. But other than that, I just went to the beach, tried to do a little bit of figure sketching, which I'm not always that great in, but no, it's good. It's good practice. So you would just sit on the beach and do your thing. You can go for walks there. Sometimes you don't see anybody at all, and you can just look at the color of, or the clearness of this water. It is absolutely awesome. Of course, the doors in Zanzibar is something else. It's in Stone Town itself, and Stone Town is a wonderful town to walk around on. It's the history behind it. It's incredible. The little alleyways where you can buy curios, the paintings that they do, you can stand and watch them paint. You can hire little boats, do trips to various islands, and I tended to take my book everywhere. So the painting on the left was on the other side of the island. They call the more windy side, and we had this little self-catering unit that we hired on the beach, and it was just great. So for your travels, having a sketchbook is absolutely the best thing you can do for yourself if you like painting, and just get into the habit of getting out there in nature. You know, it's so much better sitting outside and painting than sitting cooped up in your studio, especially in winter. Our studio is actually pretty cold. It's at the bottom of our house. So if the sun was shining, boy, I'd be out there like a shot. It is just wonderful. Oh, don't forget your clips. I didn't show you the clips, of course, with the windy area here in Cape Town. You'd need clips on your sketchbook just so the pages don't rattle around. But it really is the best thing you can do. And to round it off, I've got a little watercolor I did here of some honeysuckle that was flowering in the garden. We fortunate we've got some orange ones and some yellow ones, and I picked a nice sprig and I placed it down, and here I'll show you a time-lapse video of painting the flower, also without drawing it first. So you just go by instinct, and you know what, who cares if it's not exactly the same? No one's going to say, oh, show me show me that flower. I want to see if you did every single leaf, every petal, every stamen, whatever on it. So just have fun, be free with your brush strokes. The more you do these without drawing first, the better they'll get, obviously, but it will help with your drawing skills as well. And they tend to go pretty quickly. So you've just got to go for it. And while the paint is still wet, you're adding darker pigment. So it runs a little bit, say, into the greens, running a little bit into the red. Don't worry if it's not dry and it does run and it makes back runs. It doesn't matter. It all just adds to the style of the painting, the end result, as long as you're enjoying what you're doing. And it's amazing how time flies when you are painting, that you all know that. You must agree how quickly time goes. And here I was just putting in a little bit of the shadow at the bottom because it's lying on a surface, just to sort of anchor it down onto the page. So very quick and easy. That was a time lapse, but this one probably took me maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. So a lot of fun. I wish you a lot of joy with your painting and your sketchbooks. And please, if you want to ask any questions, Audrey will facilitate that. She'll send me a message and we'll reply to you. So please, if you have any questions about anything I've spoken about today, don't hesitate to ask. If it's what type of paints or what type of paper or where do I buy what, or anything more about my art travels or retreats, no problem, you can just let me know. So happy sketching, and we'll see you out there someplace, somewhere. So you will just have to excuse me here while I try and sort out where to stop the recording. Okay, cheers.